What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Mcreator tutorial, and in today's video we're going to be showing you how to make custom structures. Now I'm going to cover how to make one that spawns on the surface as well as one that spawns underground, and I'm also going to be covering custom loot tables and how you can get a chest or a barrel or something like that with a custom loot table generating inside of it for every instance of your structure that spawns. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Now we're actually going to be starting inside the Minecraft application. This isn't custom Minecraft or anything. This is, I just went ahead and launched Mcreator, and I'm in Minecraft right here. So we're going to create a brand new world in creative, and we're going to make this on a super flat world. And we're going to start by building our structure. So the first thing you're going to want to do is do /give @s structure block. And this is going to be the block that we use to determine what our structure is, the size of it, and everything like that. So personally, I like to start with the structure flush to the ground. So we're actually going to break this out, place in our structure block here, and name it whatever we want. So I'm going to name this structure 1. And then we're going to press load over here, corner. And then here's where we can set its relative position and its structure size. Now I think the relative position is good just like this. This is pretty much going to tell us where to start putting in the bounding box. And then the structure size here is going to obviously determine the size. So I don't really have anything in mind. So I'm just going to go with 10, 10, and 10. Start building. And if it's bigger than that, smaller than that, that's really not a problem. But then we're going to go ahead and press save. And you'll notice that it creates this little bounding box for our structure here. This is a 10 by 10 by 10 bounding box. Now, if you have any structure that is larger than 16 by 16 by 16, you're probably going to want to generate this in puzzle piece. And now I've never messed with puzzle piece structures myself, but if you have a puzzle piece or jigsaw structure that you want to do, feel free to comment down below and give the video a like. And if we get enough likes and comments, then I will go ahead and do some research, figure out how to do jigsaw structures, and release a jigsaw structure video. But in this video, we're just going to stick with a simple structure here. This is going to be a structure that spawns on the surface, and it's going to be kind of just like a little piece of farmland that spawns in plains biomes. Now, I did actually get this idea from a viewer. I believe his name was Cryoman, if I'm remembering correctly. He has a structure like this that spawns in his mod, Plantiful, which if you are on Mcreator or anything like that, consider giving it a look, because I did look at it and it is pretty fun. But we're going to go ahead and just kind of create a replica of that right here. So now we've got our basic structure here. This is, like I said, just going to kind of spawn in the plains biomes, but we do want our wheat to be at kind of varying heights when it spawns. I think that's going to look kind of interesting. You don't have to do any of this, but just in case you do want your wheat to be at varying heights, we can go ahead and show you how to do that. Now, first, I am waiting for our farmland here to update and become hydrated, because as soon as it becomes hydrated, we can set the random tick speed to 0. That's going to prevent any natural growth of our wheat seeds. Then we can hit them with some bone meal, get them to the height we want, and then kind of lock it in at that level. So I'm going to catch you once I've done that. Alright, so you can see there, I sped it up for a little bit just to get this farmland hydrated, and then I went ahead and slowed it back down to 0. So at this point, these wheat seeds will never grow, but if we go ahead and get some bone meal, bone meal, and we just kind of hit them sporadically like this, we can get varying lengths of wheat in our wheat fields here. Something like this, I would say, looks pretty good. So when you stumble upon it at first, it'll look just like this. Now, if you want a chest or a custom loot table for these structures, just continue watching the video, and in the next structure, the one that spawns underground, I will have a chest with a custom loot table, but just for this one, I think I want it to be just like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and come in here, and we're going to tweak the height of this structure to make sure that, you know, it's not any taller than it needs to be. So we can come in here and change this height to 2, press save. And you'll see it immediately cuts down that bounding box to 2, which is, of course, the only height that we need here. If you want, you can also change the name of this structure. to something like wheat fields. I would recommend putting a underscore between these two words. That is how Minecraft would do it. You don't have to, of course, and you can also come over here and name this, change this namespace to whatever your mod is. If it was my mod, it would be A.C.E MC Overhaul, but it is not my mod currently. We are actually in a special type of workspace that I've made custom just for this tutorial. So it would be structure underscore tutorial. Just like so. Then we can press save, and once you've pressed save, I like to press it a few times just because I'm superstitious about this type of stuff, but it should say structure saved as and whatever you have it saved as right there. We can then come back into Mcreator in here and then go into our resources tab and structures. We're going to import a structure from Minecraft, and you should see it's right here. Now keep in mind that structure 1 is still saved. And there's really unfortunately no way to delete this as far as I'm aware, but we want the one that we called wheat fields. So we're going to do wheat fields right there, press OK, and we now have our wheat field structure. We can then come into our mod, and of course, because we love organization, the first thing we're going to do is make a folder and call it wheat fields, just like that. Open up our folder, and then once we're in here, we can create a new structure element. Structures are right here, and we're going to call this wheat fields. Biomes to generate structure in, like I said, we only want this generating in the plains biome. Separation and spacing can be a little bit confusing, but if you go ahead and read this right here, separation is the minimum distance in chunks that the structures can spawn between each other, and spacing is roughly the average distance in chunks that you will find. So separation must be smaller than your spacing. So I'd say at the bare minimum, we do want at least 2 chunks between our wheat fields that spawn. And on average, we can have, let's say, 6 chunks between them. This is going to be a surface structure right here, and it's going to generate with the surface structures. If you want to learn more about what each of those generation stages mean, you can always just click on this link right here, the structure link. And then that'll bring you to this page. It'll kind of walk you through all of it. You can scroll down, and there is some important stuff down here. Next up, we're going to select our ground detection type, or basically how the structure is going to determine what ground is and where it can spawn. So you have a couple of options here. The first one is motion blocking. So any block that spawns that, blocks the player's motion, it will spawn on top of that. Now that is also going to be on top of trees. This one right here, though, is motion blocking, no leaves. So this kind of circumvents the leave problem. Although if it tries to spawn directly on top of a tree, a log, it will still spawn on top of that log. You can also do the ocean floor or ocean floor WG. Now WG is world generation. So world generation is before you have things like raw generation, which is your grass and your leaves and your trees. So for the most part, you're usually going to want to do ocean floor world gen or world surface world gen, because world surface regular is going to have it spawning on top of grass and other stuff like that. So we want world surface world gen because we do not want it spawning on the ocean floor. If you have it spawning underground, instead, you're going to want to use this structure start height. You can check this and then it will spawn underground pretty much the same way that ores do, except it spawns your structure instead of an ore. Now here you have terrain adaptation type. If you click on this question mark here, you can see right here a brief explanation of what each of these mean. So none means it has no effect on the terrain around it. A beard thin means that it will add terrain below the structure and removes any terrain that spawns inside the structure. It says right here, this is what villages use. A beard box is a stronger version of beard thin. This is what ancient cities use to kind of really clear out that entire area and make sure that you have solid ground underneath you. Bury will add terrain completely around the structure. That's what strongholds will use. So encapsulate is probably used best for jigsaw pieces that, have pieces that might stick out of the ground occasionally, and then it will encapsulate those pieces so that it is entirely underground. I think this is partially used for trail ruins as well, and then that top piece is generated on top of it, so you do have a little bit sticking out. But we're going to go ahead and go with none. The structure to generate is of course going to be our custom wheat fields, and then the projection to the rain is going to be terrain matching. If we have this set to rigid, it will spawn in exactly as we made it in that circular disc, but if we have it match the terrain, it's going to have a little bit of varying height, and it's just going to look a lot more natural. If you have it set to rigid, I would highly recommend that you have this set to at the very least beard thin, or maybe beard box, depending on how strong you want that terrain matching to be. But if you have it set to rigid and you also have this set to none, then your structure might spawn in kind of floating above the ground in some cases. The only blocks we are not going to place is our structure void right here, and then we're going to go ahead and save the mod element. We then go ahead and launch our game to make our second structure and test out this one and make sure it's working properly. So before we make our next structure, I'm going to come down here and make a brand new world in creative mode, and we are going to see if we can't find our wheat fields generating out in the plains. So here we have an example of where our wheat field spawned. Now you can see it clearly tried to spawn right here on the edge and then placed itself out here. So you may want to consider adding some tighter conditions to your wheat field to make sure that it's always spawning in the grass. Now unfortunately there is no way to add tighter conditions on the structure item that Mcreator provides for you, but you can add more conditions on the feature item. Features are pretty much just structures, but are way more advanced within Mcreator. Structures honestly need another overpass, a passover, and so some better updates and whatnot. So if we come in here and just call this test real quick, I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. You'll notice that the features spawn the same way. You will select where it spawns, such as surface structures. You can restrict biomes the same way, but you can also do additional generation conditions, where you check areas around it to make sure that they are grass. The only downside to using a feature instead of a structure is that you cannot do the /locate structure command, because of course these are labeled as features. So right now, if we were to do this, you can see that we can /locate our structure, but if we were to make this as a feature, we could not /locate it, which is a problem. However, we do have another example of our wheat fields right over here, and this one spawned in a little bit better. You can see that all the grass is here. This one had some of the grass get deleted because it spawned over a river, and the gravel patches, the way it spawns, is replacing some of the grass at the surface level with gravel. So you can see down here that is what's happened, and you have some of that extra gravel dropping down. But we also have a problem, and that problem is the little corners of our wheat fields are deleting the grass surrounding it, and that just doesn't look right now, does it? So luckily there is an easy solution to this problem. If we come back into our structure world, all we have to do is do /give @s structure void. Now this is going to be a void block, which tells the game when it's inside of a structure to not place that block and just generate whatever was there normally. And you can see whenever I hover over it that we can indeed see that this block is there. But if you want to see this block otherwise, you're going to have to come in here and change this setting show invisible blocks to on, and then press save. Now you can see these blue squares here. These are air or blank blocks, which will spawn with the structure. And these little red blocks are structure voids. So anywhere we place a structure void, when our structure generates, it will not overwrite the existing terrain or the existing blocks that have already generated there. Now there should be no reason to place structure void up at this top layer at all. I believe you could, and it wouldn't affect anything, but there's also, like I said, kind of no reason to do so. All right, no more nighttime, but let's say that you wanted to place in structure void in all of these places right here, only replacing the air. There is an easier way to do that instead of placing them manually. You can come to this corner, do /fill, and then get your coordinates there, press enter. It's going to give you an error, but that's not a problem because all we wanted to do was come over here. You can then press arrow up to get those coordinates back, space again, and then get the coordinates for this, and then do structure void. That's going to fill that area with structure void, but however we want it to not fill it, we want it to replace air. And then you'll notice right there, all of the air blocks become structure void. Remember, after any changes you make to your structure, you're going to have to come down here and press save, and then it will save your new structure as whatever you have the name for. Next up, I want to make an underground structure so you guys can see how to do that. And I believe this one I'm not going to show you how to set it up in the structures area here, because I think our walkthrough here was pretty conclusive and inclusive of all the information you need to know, unless you want to set up a jigsaw structure, which, like I said, I have to do a little bit more research on myself. So instead, what we're going to do for this next underground structure is I'm going to show you how to make it in the features tab, because like I said, this features tab is way more powerful, and it's worth knowing at least some of the basics. So what we're going to do is come in here and name this structure. I'm going to name it dungeon special, because I'm probably just going to make this look like a standard dungeon, but with a couple of special changes, because I honestly can't think of anything else that I want to spawn underground. Remember, if you want it to be not in the Minecraft class, then you're going to have to type in the name of your mod here. Ours is structure_tutorial, and then do a colon. So structure_tutorial dungeon special, and then we can press load, corner, and then give it a size. As far as the size goes, I think we're going to start with a 10, 10, and 10 once again, and press save, and then we can work with this area right here. All right, so here we are. We have our structure, and you know what? It sounds like we have some silverfish actually spawning in here, even though I have game rule do mob spawning set to false. So you know what? Just for now, to prevent some mobs, silverfish from spawning, we're gonna go ahead and light this up, because any silverfish that spawn are actually going to kind of hide within the stone immediately, which is, you know, fine by me, but I don't want it to get out of hand. So just for temporary purposes, we're gonna go ahead and do that. Now I also can drop this down by at least 2 blocks, I think maybe 3. Yeah, 3 blocks right here. So we're going to come in here and change the height from 10 to 7, and then press save once more. That cuts that height down right there. And then now we have a decision to make. When this spawns, do we want it to spawn as a solid cube, despite the fact that the inside is cylindrical like this? Or do we want these side areas here to spawn as structure void? Now, personally, I want them to be structure void, so I'm going to place a structure void in right there, change that to on, and then place a structure void up here in this corner, and then run that same command that we did last time, just like so. The only problem with that is all of our inside is now structure void, which is of course going to be an issue. So what we're going to want to do is come here to this corner and run a similar command, doing /fill here, press enter, and then come up to this corner and do /fill here, enter, and then air, replace, structure void. So then with these little areas in the sides here, you can easily run another command to do that, but I don't think it's that hard to just break these out manually. It's not that many spaces, so I'll catch you once I've broken out all of these. So just like that, we have air all inside and structure void all on the outside, so we should pretty much be ready to go, except for the fact that we want a custom loot table to spawn within this custom structure. So the first thing we're going to do is come in here and make a new custom loot table, which is right here. I'm going to call it special dungeon loot table. We want to change this final setting right here to chest. We want to keep this as a mod, and we want to get rid of the word loot table here. So this is just chests special dungeon. And then now we can build up our loot table right here. Quick debrief on how loot tables work. So this is one single pool that the loot table will pull from. We can add entries into this pool, and if we have this set to 1, it will only pull one thing from this entry right here. Now if we want to add another pool and have this set to 1, it'll pull 1 from here and 1 from here. We can of course increase the minimum and the maximum. We can enable bonus rolls right here. We don't have to do anything with Silk Touch because this is a chest. If this was a block, we would have to do things with Silk Touch, and we don't have to worry about a fortune or anything like that. But that's pretty much the basics of how a loot table works. So I'm going to go ahead and build up a quick loot table, and then I'll catch you when I'm done. All right, so right here we have a loot table that very closely mirrors the existing dungeon loot tables with just a few minor tweaks. I think the only thing I changed was what music discs can spawn, and maybe some of the weights just a little bit, but let me kind of walk you through what's going on here. This weight right here determines how likely you are to get each, so you can see you're most likely to get a name tag or a saddle, and then a couple of the music discs, this one being super rare, and then some horse armor, diamond armor getting rarer and rarer as you go down, with the rarest one being the enchanted golden apple. Now right here, you'll notice I wanted to do an enchanted book, but instead of doing an enchanted book the way Mcreator does it, I did a regular book and then gave it entry enchantment levels, minimum 30, maximum 30, and that will enchant this book with a level 30 enchant, guaranteed, just completely randomly. If you do an enchanted book, it will be an enchanted book with no enchantments. It doesn't really make any sense, so this is how you do an enchanted book in your loot table right here, and you'll notice that all of the min and maximum counts for each of these is 1. But when we go to the next loot table, this loot table will generate anywhere between 1 and 4 times. Once again, with the weight being kind of different, none of the items in here are enchanted, but you'll notice that this one, the wheat, has a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 4. So let's say the first time this generates, it chooses wheat. Well, maybe we'll get 3 wheat, and then the second time this generates, it does again, and we get 1 wheat, and then we get 3 coal, and that's kind of just how it all works. But this very closely mirrors the standard monster loot. And then right here, this one rolls 3 times every time. They all have an equal chance, and they'll generate anywhere between 1 and 8 of that item. You can see right here, this is the chart that they give you on the Minecraft wiki. So you can see pretty much, let's look at that last loot table right here, which you can see here is 3, generates 3 times. The sections here tell you how many loot tables, or how many pools the loot table pulls from. And then the numbers here tell you what item is in what pool. This is the stack size, so you can see these 4 items have anywhere from 1 to 8, and it generates in the 3 times pool, and they all have an equal weight. This one says 10, but there's really no reason not to just keep it at 1. So that's kind of how you read this chart if you were, for example, say, wanting to base your loot table on an existing loot table in the game. But with that said, we can go ahead and save this. Now, this is important. You're going to want to remember that it is a mod namespace with chests / special dungeon. And if you have any questions about what your mod namespace is, you can go up here into workspace settings, and then right here, this is your namespace. That's actually a good thing that we checked that, because I guess our namespace does not have an underscore there. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, save changes, and then we can launch our mod again. So what we're going to want to do here is do /give @s command block. I almost did structure block again, but we want a command block this time. We want to place it in just like so, and then in here we want to paste this command. Now you can pretty much just copy and paste this. However, you will need to remember that right here where it says structure tutorial, you're going to need to replace this with your namespace. And then right here after the /, you're going to need to replace this with whatever the name of your loot table is. But this is exactly how we want ours, so we can press done, press this button, and then you'll notice when we open this chest, it has all of our special loot in it. Now, if we press this button again, it's just going to kind of delete that and be all weird, so we're going to want to break that chest out, then we can press it again. You'll see that that's working. And then we can press it again, and then you see it's generating random loot every time. But how do we get this chest spawn inside of our loot table? That's a good question. So let's go ahead and press this button. That'll clear this chest. I can break the chest, press it again. Now, as soon as we open this chest, it's going to generate our loot table, and this chest is going to be permanently locked as whatever loot that is. So we do not want to open this chest. We need to pick block this chest, and then when we place it down, you'll notice it's still not having any loot in it. So some of you may know why that is, some of you may not, and that is because we are not holding down the control key. So whenever we pick block, you'll want to hold down control and then press pick block. And then now if we place this chest down, you'll notice every time we place it down, down, it spawns with more random loot from our loot table. So this chest is a chest with our loot table built right into the NBT data. So then you can come into your structure, and wherever you want this chest to be, go ahead and place it down, but do not open it. If you open this chest, it's going to trigger our loot table, and then that loot is going to become permanent. So you can place down this chest wherever you want, but do not open it. So I like it just like that. Then we can come over here and save our structure one last time, and we should be good to go. So the last thing we need to do is actually, of course, import our structure into Mcreator and then add it to the game. So we're going to import a structure from Minecraft right here, the dungeon special, press OK. Come into here, and then we're going to add this as a feature type structure. I'm going to call this special dungeon right here. Now this is a custom feature, so we want to go into advanced features, scroll down, and add the custom structure right here. This is going to be the dungeon special right there. Now we could add an offset if we want, and sure enough, just to kind of show you how it works, I'm going to go ahead and add an offset of -5 to each one, with a random rotation and a random mirror, just because I don't think any of that really matters. Now, as far as do not place blocks go, we do want it to place our air block, so we don't want this to be air, we want this to be structure void. And we also, even though it's not in there, I always like to put the structure block in there as well, just in case for some reason the structure block ended up in the structure, but it shouldn't ever place that structure block. So this should be all we need. Now we want this to generate with underground structures down here. So if we look around, we should have underground structures right there. We don't want to restrict the biomes, but if we leave this completely blank, this will try and spawn in the nether, in the end, and all the things like that. So we're just going to want to come in here and select every single biome that is not an end biome or a nether biome. And just like that, we're good to go. Just a real quick scroll through, make sure that none of these biomes here are selected, because these are end biomes and or nether biomes. Then we can press use selected. And now we can decide how we want it to spawn using our common placements and our height placements. So as far as our height placements go, we want it to have uniform distribution between y equals -59 and y equals, let's say, 48. If you wanted this to spawn on the surface, you could put on height map, motion blocking, or any of these height maps like what we had in our structures feature as well. So the features, like I said, are very powerful. They can pretty much do everything the structures can and more, except we cannot do /locate to find this. We're going to have to go into the world and just look around and pray that we can find it. I also want to have a random XZ within the chunk, and really you could put whatever of these you want in here. Now most of you are probably going to want to have a with chance 1 in something, but because this is just for demonstration purposes, I kind of want this to spawn just all over the place so that we can find one super easily. So I'm not going to do that, but you're probably going to want a with chance 1 in something. 1 in 5 is honestly not as rare as you probably think it is, but there are an absolute ton of conditional placements and other things like that. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and add a only if condition. We don't need is air at current position met. I want to do is block at position offset. Remember that our structure here is 7 blocks tall, solid. In fact, let's change this to 8 to solid. And that way that will verify that at least the very tippy top of our structure where it's trying to spawn is underground. It might stick out just a little bit, but for the most part, this is not a bad condition to kind of check and make sure that we are spawning properly. Now you can't always do in here all conditions are met and then have several conditions and several checks to make sure that lots of things are solid to really make sure it's buried, but this is a pretty good start. So let's go ahead and save this and see how this is working. All right, so here we are in a brand new world, and we can actually find our other feature right here. Now you may be thinking to yourself, hey, didn't we fix that corner problem with structure void? What is going on there? Why is it still deleting some of the grass from the corners? Well, we did indeed fix it, but the thing is, after we saved it, we did not re-import it into Mcreator. So after every single time you change your structure, you're going to have to import it again like this, and then press OK, and then now that updated version has been imported. So that's definitely something worth noting. But real quick, let's do /game mode. Well, actually, we can just do it right in here. We're using F3 and 4. Change into spectator mode. and then go underground. And you'll notice that our special dungeon is all over the friggin' place. Like I said, 1 in 5 is going to really be quite important, but you can see it's spawning underground pretty much exactly as we want it. If we come in here, we do want to double check that our whatchamacallit is working. Oh, and I also forgot to destroy the torches, so that's also something worth noting. But if we come in here, you'll notice that our custom loot table is indeed working just fine. If we go into spectator mode and then come up here once more, you'll notice that this one also has custom loot that is different from the other one. So everything in here is working just as we intended it. Although, let's say that you don't want them to spawn right on top of each other like this, there should be a pretty easy way to fix that. You know, actually looking through these, it doesn't seem like we have spacing options for this structure, or at least this feature. But we can always do the common placements here and then change this to a 1 and really low chance, and that'll just make it incredibly unlikely that 2 ever spawn on top of each other, although I suppose it still would be possible. But that should be everything for today's video. Like I said, if you want to do a nether structure, you're going to have to use this feature element. You cannot use the structure element, because if you use the structure element, it will spawn that structure directly on top of the nether roof, because that is always going to be your ground detection. Every single one of these will detect the nether roof. There's not a single one that will work. So unfortunately, you have to use this feature option, but honestly, the feature option is way more powerful anyways. It just kind of sucks that you can't slash locate it. You're gonna have to fly around and find it naturally. But I do hope that that this tutorial has been helpful for you. If you have any questions or anything like that, please leave them in the comments down below. And once again, the command that you need to get your special loot table working is also in the comments down below. But until next time, peace out.